Hi, I'm Drew.
And I'm Sam.
And welcome to Drewling Samantics.
Hello everyone, and hello to my little podcast buddy. There you go, Sam. How you doing?
Yes, very well, thank you, mate. How are you? Have you had a busy week?
I have had a very busy week, but as we said in our last episode, I'm still not allowed to say anything just yet. Not yet. No. And how's your week been?
Likewise, mate. It has been busy. I've been up to lots, but as we explained in last week's episode, right now we're both working on things that, although very exciting, are also very secretive at the moment. So that is not to say that everything won't be revealed eventually. We promise it will. We'll be able to explain why things have been kept so quiet up to this stage. But for now, it's just a case of trust us. You're going to want to hear about it when we're allowed to chat about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All will be revealed, Sam.
It will indeed, as will, very shortly, our guest this week, because we're joined by someone amazing, someone entertaining, and someone who, I have to say, mate, has a very important message.
Well, for me, I've not met this gentleman. I have heard a lot about him, as have maybe some of our long-term podcast listeners, because I know you've worked with him in the past. On very exciting projects, but not only they're very exciting projects, but they're very meaningful, and he has a very important message to get over and to tell us about, as you say, but done in a very entertaining and theatrical manner, but a message that's very important and work that is very important. So someone I'm really looking forward to chatting to.
Well, yeah, he's got a lot to tell, and he's almost combined two sectors, two areas of life, shall we say, that you wouldn't necessarily associate normally, but as a result has created things that are so hugely important and meaningful that I think it's just, we're very lucky to be able to speak to him. I personally am very lucky to have been able to work with him on several occasions on some of this important work. But overall, mate, I think what we need to do is just chat to him, because then we can stop being cryptic, because we've had a whole week of that, yes. And we can really let everyone find out exactly who this man is and what he's been doing in the industry that is so important.
Absolutely. So shall I do the honours, ladies and gentlemen? Sam, let us meet the very interesting, the very important, the very fascinating Mr. David Bain.
And there he is. Welcome to the show, Mr. Dave Bain. Long time no see. How the devil are you, sir?
I'm very well. I'm just very stressed, but stressed but well.
Well, we'll come on to the stress levels in a minute. But first of all, please meet my podcasting partner in crime, Drew. Drew, this is Dave. Dave, this is Drew.
Good morning, Dave. Lovely to see you. Lovely to have you with us.
Good morning, Drew. Lovely to see you too.
Good stuff. And just Drewling Samantics, you can relax, chill. You're in very safe hands. Just have a lovely time with us, Dave, and we will try and gently de-stress you. Either that, or we'll just crank them up to levels unbeknown before.
Well, I was going to say, Drew, it's all very well telling him to relax and that we are Drewling Samantics, but he has worked with me before, so that's probably not helping.
That's probably why the poor man's stressed. Now he's going to have to face you.
Anyway, for those people out there, Dave, who don't know who you are and pity them, let's fill them in. Please give us a quick, brief description of what you do and who you are, please.
Yes, so I'm Dave, which you've already said. So I'm a writer-director, and I run a theatre production company called Schizoid Productions. And I've been working in theatre for probably the last 20 years. I started out as an actor, did acting for about 10 years, and I tried stand-up comedy for a few years. But I've always written across the whole of that period, and I found that writing was really what I really loved. So I retrained also to be a psychotherapist about 15 years ago. So I guess as I got more into the writing, came to an intersection of mental health, which I was working with, and my writing. And I thought, there's something really interesting here about maybe putting the two together and maybe doing shows and possibly musicals, because I also write music. and bringing all those three strands together. And Schizoid Productions is about that, really.
Amazing. It's a very niche area, something that isn't done a huge amount in the world of theatre, but I think safe to say needs to be done a bit more, or certainly needs to be done in the right ways, which is something that you have kind of combined your careers and set out to do. And that's obviously how we met, performing, or in your case, directing, writing, producing a wonderful show called Game Over, which, I mean, I'm not even going to attempt to describe it, because obviously it's your baby, but I was involved in it in such a way that it became a massive passion project for me as well. But I find it difficult to describe it to people when they ask. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Dave, and say, can you do just that?
Thanks for that, Sam. Yes. I struggle describing all our shows. So Game Over is basically it's an immersive game show. And Sam, you played the sort of game show host.
Indeed, yeah.
Who happened to be deaf.
Yeah.
And the idea in Game Over is that we have two characters who have both committed suicide on the same night. And at the start of the show, they turn up in the afterlife and they met you, and you tell them that, there's been a clerical issue. Only one of you is allowed to die tonight. The other one has to go back to their old life. Yes. And neither of them want to go back to their old life because, they committed suicide. They'd had enough. Yeah. So you forced them to decide who goes back by playing a sequence of game show rounds. So whoever wins the game show, and what winning means is, an interesting concept, gets to stay dead, effectively. Yeah. It's a musical, so there's songs in it. We have a judging panel. So there's a lot of different elements. There's lots of different game shows we riffed on. There's the X Factor element with the judges. And it's actually, when you tackle suicide in that way, it's actually quite a fun way to do it. So the first act, I think, Sam, you probably agree with it. Mostly it's just a really fun first act. The audience reactions we had were incredible. And then in the second act, it kind of gets into the characters a bit more. It uses these game show rounds to explore different parts of their life, what brought them to those decisions. And it is quite an unusual show, I think. But it worked very well. I mean, we only did 9 shows, and one person came to see it 3 times. I think that's really unusual,
That's quite extraordinary. It's such a short run that someone will come back. I mean, obviously, it throws the audience a wonderful curveball, because using a game show, which of course it seems every time you turn on the television there is a game show, so it's going to catch people's eyes from that point of view. But also, it's a very delicate. I mean, that's a ridiculous understatement to say it's a very delicate subject. Why is it? I mean, you say you're a writer, you write music. And did you think, hang on a minute, I'm going to take a very serious subject to write my play? Or did you think I'm sort of like kind of chicken and egg situation? Did you think, great, I think something needs to be said about this, and I think the theatre is the place to do it? Or did you kind of go, "Whoa, dare I do this"? How did the show sort of and theatre meet, as it were? Well, the subject of theatre.
I think a lot of the latter you just mentioned. I've been working with suicidal people for 10 years, but 6 or 7 years.
Right.
Been very affected by their stories. And then, I had a theatrical background and a musical background. And somehow I thought I can bring these things together. Now, there was a sensitivity. I was really worried the first time we did it on whether people would think it's completely tasteless. Because when you pull back from it, you look at it, this could be really awful, and really insensitive. But I think we managed to sort of find a path through it where it kind of worked, and it really affected people. People were crying in the audience. I was really surprised at how deeply it affected people, and gave them a sense of what it means to reach that point in your life,
No, so Sam and I were talking about Game Over and about the subject when we were discussing guests, and we said, got to have Dave on because it's an immense subject, tackled it in a way that we understand. But it wasn't until we were talking about it that so many people are touched by the subject of suicide. I mean, I know twice when I was a young teenager, friends of mine lost people through suicide, and you forget that, and then you remember it and you go, well, I remember it as a good, strong way of growing up. It taught me an awful lot. But if we bury those things, I mean, that's when we have the problems, I think. I mean, there's me teaching my grandmother to suck eggs here. But so by bringing them up in a way that you can smile at and question in a gentle way, I mean, that is incredibly powerful. So for that person coming back 3 times, I can see how that would work.
Yeah, it's and I really want to bring this show back. We only did 1 week, but the word of mouth in that week was extraordinary. I had people telling people they would come in literally the next day to see the show.
Wow.
The issue of bringing it back is it's a very expensive show, because this was the first show I wrote for a big cast, and stupidly I wrote 7 parts. So it's just very expensive to put on. But I think I'm definitely going to try and come back to this show next year, get a budget in place. I think it deserves to be seen by a wider audience. I think it's a meaningful show, but it's a very fun show as well.
Do you know, Dave, I think the thing for me that sums up just how it touched people and how powerful it is, but how necessary it is, please feel free to tell me we're not supposed to talk about this, but we were commissioned to do a one-off performance at a very special event, and I won't go too far into it because of the sort of sensitive nature, but it was commissioned by a family who had lost their young son, and to celebrate his life each year, they host almost like a festival, essentially, don't they, with music and partying and events and things like that at their home. And the show touched them so much that they wanted to put it on. And you mentioned earlier about we often had in performances people crying in the audience. One of the resounding memories for me is watching the best friend of this young lad who had taken his own life in absolute bits, watching the show, like distraught sobbing, but then speaking to him at the end and him saying how powerful and how important the message was, and how appropriately we had dealt with it, and just the right levels of humor mixed with the right levels of sort of seriousness. And he was just blown away by how we dealt with it. And this is a man who, I think it was only 2 years prior to us doing the show that his friend had taken his life. I think
it was 1 year.
It was just the year before, yeah.
Wow.
So I think that's a great summary of what we did, because as you say, there were those nerves, and obviously not so much for me as a performer, because it was your piece of writing, but that perhaps people would think it was in bad taste to an extent. But that is a hugely sort of tip the hat moment to say, this is absolutely right, this is done in the right way. So kudos to you. I mean, kudos to obviously the cast for what we achieved, but a brilliant piece of theatre which does need to be seen again. It really does.
Yeah. And kudos to you, Sam, because one of the things you were less enamored with the script was there were a lot of E words in the script.
Oh, see, do you know what? I thought I'd avoid it. So I don't know what it is about sort of mental health or sort of the brain, but all the scientific terminology begins with E. Like they must have just gone, do you know what? Every single word that we're going to use to describe some really important scientific element or theory, we're going to make it start with E. So I think I had about 8 or 9 different E words with at least 3 syllables each. And it's a miracle that I got through it, in all honesty.
Well, I'm so horrid that I so enjoyed watching you struggling with E words. As I did rewrites, I put in more E words.
Yeah.
Just to enjoy you trying to say them.
Thanks ever so much. Do you know what? That completely off topic, but there's a really interesting story about Harry Potter. And as anyone with children will know, and most people sort of a generation will know, Stephen Fry is the amazing voiceover performer for the audio recordings of the Harry Potter books. And there's a story that goes that I think the phrase was Harry pocketed it. See, I can't even say it. Basically, Harry put his wand in his pocket. Harry pocketed it. And Stephen Fry struggled with that phrase. So he spoke to J.K. Rowling and said to her, would you mind if I adjust it slightly, just change the tense or the order of the words slightly? It will mean exactly the same thing, but I'm just struggling to get this phrase out. And she said, oh, no, I'd rather you didn't. And if you listen, going on from that, I think that phrase comes up at least 6 or 7 times per book from that point onwards. So she literally went, right, Stephen Fry's going to be doing all of these. I'm going to mess with him, which is just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. But yeah, sorry, went off topic. We'll go back to seriousness. But yes, no, thank you, Dave. E-words are obviously my nemesis. So anyone looking to cast me, please, a script without any long E-words. Thank you very much.
Excellent stuff. You mentioned going back, David, and that you retrained as a psychotherapist, and it's a pretty obvious thing to say that this obviously informs your work and that. But do you think, I mean, there have been great discussions, particularly in light of lockdown and the pandemic. Do you think we're getting better at discussing mental health issues? Or do we need more theatre to make people discuss them? Are we getting better, or do we need Game Over to be, running every week, as it were, which I'm sure you would love, but
we definitely need Game Over running every week. It's 2 packed houses in the West End.
Yeah, get it.
But I think we have got better at talking about it. I started working with suicidal people in 2009, and it was so taboo. And there's been a number of charities since then, like Calm, who are great.
Yeah.
To some extent, it's more, it is a female problem as well, but I think 3 times as many men as women take their own lives. So it's about helping men really to be more vulnerable and open up. And there has been a big shift, definitely. It's less taboo. I also see, I've got 2 young sons, and in their generation, they're just so much more open about talking about their feelings. So I think there's a generational change coming as well. But you can never have enough theatre to talk about mental health, as far as I'm concerned. So yes.
Thought you might say that. Good.
And from an actor's perspective, actually, it was hugely empowering to be able to bring this kind of subject matter to the stage. Now, albeit for anyone that's seen the show, they'll be going, what the hell, you were basically Dale Winton meets Richard O'Brien in a death makeup and carrying a scythe. But to be part of something that was so powerful and so many people, it touched their lives and it spoke to them. I think the opportunities to do that as an actor are fairly sporadic at best. And I feel very honoured that I had that opportunity to be part of something. I mean, and since Game Over, obviously, you've got a couple more shows, Dave, which are look at slightly different elements, but are around similar themes. Do you want to give us sort of an outline of those?
Yeah, so after Game Over, I did a show called Dissociated, very different show. It was about child sexual abuse. It still took a sort of novel approach into exploring it. It was set in the protagonist's dreams. So there was a lot of fantasy elements in it. And again, it for the first third, I'd say it was quite light. But that audiences found that very powerful. It was a more serious piece than Game Over, but it was, in a way, I think maybe it will always be my favorite play. It was a 2-hander, and there's something about that intimacy of a 2-hander that I really like. So that we did 2 weeks of that, and we sold pretty well. And yeah, now I'm working on the next play. Well, not working on it, it's going on in October, beginning of October. And it's a play about domestic violence and conversion therapy. Again, sounds like a heavy subject, but it's after Dissociated, which was very heavy, I wanted to write a comedy again. So this is primarily, at least for the first 2/3, a comedy. And it's been a lot of fun to work on. Yeah.
What I mean, when you say is that up for performance soon? Can we see that soon?
Yeah, it's running from the 3rd of October at Waterloo East in Waterloo, surprisingly, and we're doing 4 weeks, so there's a lot of pressure to sell. I've never done 4 weeks before. I'm hoping on word of mouth, but yes, please come and see the show. It's a lot of fun. There's 15 songs. Never had that much music in one of my shows before. And I've learned a lot from doing, Game Over effectively was, I think it was really great, but it was 6 people sitting in chairs, effectively, wasn't it, Sam?
I think what you mean, Dave, is 5 people sitting in chairs and me sitting on a throne.
Yes. So dramatically, it was great, but it didn't have the sort of movement. Dissociated had a lot more movement, and this play I've written it from a much more dynamic theatrical perspective, which is quite exciting. And it's a tighter integration between the music and the dialogue now, hopefully.
So that's the last sales conference of the apocalypse, isn't it? We get the title in there. Let's get the title in there.
Let's get to the last sales conference of the apocalypse, and it's a very funny setup. It's an IT support team. Years ago, I worked in IT, so it's the sort of thing it resonates with me. And it's another immersive show. So when you arrive at the show, you think you're arriving at a sales conference for a weapons system, a nuclear weapons system. The IT support team get really bored. They hack into the weapons system and they accidentally trigger a launch. So and it's set in a bunker because this is a nuclear weapons research bunker. So
Brilliant.
The bunker locks down. So you as an audience are locked with this IT support team, and that's how do they shut down this this launch? Otherwise, it's the end of the world. And in trying to shut down the launch, they all pass out. And then it goes into the lead character's head. So that's when it gets into material about his memories. Again, there's fantasy sequences. So there's a lot of different stuff going on. It's a lot of fun. We also have Marcus Bentley from Big Brother.
Oh, yes.
In the show. He's doing the voice of God.
Fantastic.
So you weren't satisfied with having death in a musical, like this huge, powerful character. You've now gone, well, I need to one-up myself. Let's have God.
Absolutely, yes.
Love it.
And originally, I just contacted him and he did these audio recordings. And then he contacted us and said, you know, I'm an actor. I'd like to do the show live. So we thought, great. So he's going to be doing all weekend performances, Friday through to Sunday. So if you want to be in a theatre with Marcus Bentley from Big Brother, completely iconic person, please come and see this show.
Amazing.
It is. He was. You could actually say he was the voice of God on Big Brother, wasn't he?
Yes.
So that's a beautiful cue, beautiful cue for the show. Fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
Loving it. Now, say you know, in a previous life I did this, in a previous life I did that. You did have a previous life as an actor, and you retrained psychotherapist. You write music, you produce, but you've also done something. You talk about stress levels. You've done something that must drive your stress levels through the ceiling, because I've done a little bit myself. But you worked as a stand-up, so
Yes.
I mean, along with everything else, the man's multifaceted. Surely that must have been terrifying. I mean, you know, nothing frightening after that.
The reason why I stopped acting, Drew, is because I got, and I still do get dreadful stage fright. It literally goes through my whole body.
Right.
I can barely move. It's awful. My heart rate goes up. So yes, do stand up was kind of dumb when I look back on my bodily responses to performing. But I was a double act with my wife. I met my wife at drama college about 20 years ago. She's obviously the funny one, as I'm sure you can see. But we used to go on and play characters. And once I get on stage, I'm fine. But that pre-stage bit is horrible. So yes, we did that for about a year. And some of the people we were on stage with now went on to be famous, like Mark Dolan, who's now on Talk Radio, I think. And then Katie Brand, who had her own TV series for several years, who's hilarious. So we did gigs with her. So there's my comedy name dropping.
As a comedy pedigree. I mean, what sort? I always ask this because I did well. Sam, we work comedically. What sort of style were you? I mean, working with your wife is a challenge enough. But so, what sort of stuff were you doing? Where were you working?
We had different characters, but we did one thing which I like, where we were Antarctic research scientists, and we would close our 10-minute set by singing the Hokey Pokey Laboratory Rat Dissection song. So that was the highlight for me.
I don't think you get any better than that.
Wow.
Oh, you don't, do you?
Brilliant.
Just surreal. I mean, seriously surreal. But to take it, not to take it onto a serious topic necessarily, but for our lucky viewers on YouTube, they'll be able to see that in the background you have a multitude of beautiful instruments. Some particularly stunning guitars as well, and I know that room very well because we recorded an album in there, didn't we? We did the accompanying original cast recording of Game Over was recorded in that very studio, so I know it well. But music obviously is a huge influence on you, and writing music particularly. in any way, is it an escape for you? Because obviously the subject matter of your, let's call it a day job, I know you have various different jobs, but it's very heavy going, lots of sort of close personal interactions. Is music an escape in any way, or was it a way of sort of venting perhaps?
Oh, it's a total escape. I mean, when I was growing up, you know, you don't work in mental health unless you have mental health issues. And, you know, I came from a very dysfunctional family. So music for me, the guitar, totally a way to cope with what was going on outside. I think I'm lucky in that there's a history of music in my family, so I'm just quite musical anyway. But yes, absolutely. And you know, when I'm writing a song, I don't know what it is, but time just passes in a completely different way. You just don't notice it. I can sit in a recording studio for 6 hours and feel like 10 minutes has gone by. It's extraordinary.
Loving it. What do you play? The guitars are obvious. For those watching on YouTube, they'll know. Those listening to the podcast, it's a couple of beautiful guitars hanging behind Dave. But what else do you play, mate?
Yeah, I play mandolin and banjo as well. I had a massive sort of folk period in my 20s. And I've always trying to learn piano. Been trying to learn piano for 20 years. And then the last 5 years, I've really took myself to task and said, I'm going to take this seriously. I learned to read music. And I'm sort of getting somewhere, sort of grade 4, grade 5. So,
has that, Dave, got anything to do with the beautiful grand piano that I know that you treated yourself to?
It might have had a small impact. Yeah.
It's an instrument you don't buy without sort of taking seriously, do you? It's a big chunk of the home.
Yeah, I thought about getting one for years, and I don't want to sound facetious because I know there's a cost of living crisis on, but as soon as I got it, I wish I'd done it years ago. By hook or by crook, I found the money somehow, because it's extraordinary playing on a grand piano. It's a mini grand, Sam. It's not.
Sorry,
It's a
I
mini.
blew it out of proportion. I'm not sure the ceiling of the flat would have taken it if it was a full grand, to be honest. And what about the boys? Because obviously they have two incredible parents who are involved in acting, comedy, various different things. Are they taking a similar interest in music?
Not at all. No, they hate it when I play the piano. My older son just says everything I do is cringe now because he's 12.
Right.
But,
yeah.
You know, I love dad jokes and I'm not going to stop.
Now you've got some. Skitside has some. You have some fantastic collaborators. Not to mention Sam here, of course, as Death. But are they people that have wanted to work with you? You've gathered along the way, because it is a particular. You need a particular skill set, but also, and pardon the pun, a particular mindset as well to work within the field and concentrate on that. I mean, how the people that have joined you, how have they joined you, as it were?
Yeah, I mean, it's all through the usual processes, but once I find someone I like, for me personally, maybe it's a bit lazy, but I would prefer to use them again. I really like the aspect of family in theatre. I find it really hard when a show finishes and everyone goes, and it's quite gut-wrenching for me. So there's always this. I always looking for an opportunity to recreate it again. Probably should look at that in my personal therapy. But Harry Boyd is somebody I've worked with from the beginning of Game Over, and he's like becoming like a big star now. But he has got
of course, we had Harry on. He was our last guest of last season, Drew? I think
he was. Yeah.
So the amazingly talented Mr. Boyd, who, as I mentioned in the show, I met doing Game Over through Dave. So.
And he's a brilliant actor, but he's also a brilliant singer. His voice is quite extraordinary. He's recorded all the songs for the new show, and they're all available on the website, guys. So
excellent! A bit more promotion in there. Sneak it in, lovely.
Yes.
Go for it.
See how seamless that was.
Yeah. But there are, so as you say, so Harry obviously started out in Game Over, as did I, and he's been involved in Dissociated as well, as was I, albeit very briefly, bit of voiceover work, and then Eloise as well, who started in Game Over and then was in Dissociated. So you're really promoting that family feel. Do you think that also helps, being that it is very heavy subject matter that you tend to sort of write around, that these are people that you've worked with more than once?
Yeah, I think it makes a big difference, because I also understand their capacity to hold material, and they're going to be able to cope with it. And also just, I love writing for actors because then you can adjust the script for them, can really bring out their best qualities, you know.
Or submit them to more E-words. Yeah, absolutely.
Or more E-words, yes. But it was for your own good, Sam.
Oh, thanks, mate. Yeah, it's my personal development. There's a real crossover of your job roles there, helping someone get through their problems and perform at the same time.
Exactly.
I'd say there's obviously there needs to be an enormous amount of trust with the performers, because obviously, you know, you have to remember that the subject matter and the people that are going to be affected by it. So as you say, writing and choosing actors that you can write with consistently and understand, I mean, that obviously is incredibly important. Is there anything, I mean, I don't, it's a very delicate, would you write sort of commission, as it were, but have people come to you and say, we need this subject dealt with? Is that something you would, you know, with the actors, take on board as well?
Listen, I'm open to anything. So yes, definitely. I mean, it's interesting, in this new play, I wrote one of the parts for an actress that I met a few years ago. And ironically, she's too busy to do it, but you know, it was written for her.
That is ironic, isn't it? Yes.
And speaking of writing, obviously you've got Game Over and Dissociated are done for now, but you have aspirations to have Game Over out again. Last sales conference of the apocalypse, it's a tongue teaser, is out very, very soon. Do you have other things in the pipeline, or are you focusing on particularly these 3 shows for now? Do you have other things you want to write?
I'm working on the next show. I've been working on it for about a year. So I've written 2 of the songs. It's in the sort of dev phase, but it's actually, in terms of the mechanics of the plot of this show, this is an idea that's, for me, is sort of, I think Game Over, people get the idea quite fast, actually, although it is difficult to explain it. And this has the same kind of feel. It's quite, I think it's quite original. And I also think it's a show that actors are going to love because of what it's about.
I mean, that's a real bomb drop there. Right? Everyone's on the edge of their seats now.
That's a brilliant tease, David. I like that one. Yeah, and we all want a part now. He's gonna, yeah, I want it.
Are there any dwarves in it? Are there any really small people or really old people?
Well,
just I'm asking for a friend.
It's still at the dev phase, so we could have dwarves if you like.
Yeah, I think he's just taken, you know. He's taking the piss, not to put it too finely.
I'm just looking out for a mate and trying to get him in on an amazing.
Yeah. It's all right, Sam. There's nothing exacting about your egalitarianism, and I can say that, but of course you can't.
Oh! Look what's happening now. We're descending into absolute mutiny. So before we do get to a point where Drew and I start tearing proper strips off each other, and Dave sat there awkwardly. Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you, and thank you so much for coming on the show. Genuinely speaking, you bring something very, very important to the industry, and I think it's a very, as you've said, theatre is a very powerful medium, and it needs to be used for as much good as possible. It's not just an entertainment method. Absolutely, that's hugely important, but to be able to deliver a message to people that perhaps might become slightly more easy to understand or to accept because of the way it's done is a hugely, hugely important element. So I think what you're doing is incredible. And now I'm going to flip it completely on its head. And you know what's coming, because I know you're an avid watcher of the show. And we always like to finish up by putting our guests in the spotlight and going, right, now is your opportunity to tell us a story, tell us an anecdote, tell us something that's fairly memorable or ridiculous or whatever, something throughout your career that really stands out, just to leave our audience with something particularly special. So can you do that for us, Mr. Bain?
I will try. So it's I think it was 2018 when we did Game Over in the Brendan Roses Theatre, and we did a week. And my wife is in the cast of Game Over because she's an actress, and she's very funny. She was playing the judge of industry.
Yes.
But she came to me like a half an hour before. I think you got to the interval, and everyone went backstage. Obviously, I don't get backstage because I'm just a writer and director. And she came out to me after 5 minutes and said, "What is going on backstage?" I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She says, "Everyone is talking about the aircon." And I said, "What do you mean, what about the aircon?" And she said, "It's really, really hot on stage. The actors are too hot. They want to turn on the aircon, but they're all really scared of you." And I said, "What do you mean scared?" She says, "They're treating you like some sort of god, like, oh, are you sure we can turn this on? Will Dave be upset? Maybe Dave doesn't want the aircon on. Is this something we can really ask him?" You know? And she was just thought it was hilarious because obviously we've been together for 20 years. So yes. So it was interesting to see behind the curtain. That's how those relationships manifest in terms of the way the actors think about the director. You know, that was eye-opening and quite funny.
Wow.
Did you turn the aircon on, Dave?
I think they did turn the aircon on, yeah. I should have gone,
playing roles of people who have committed suicide, not afraid of death. Then you've got Death himself, who's not afraid of anything. But none of us wanted to ask you if it was okay to have some aircon on. Yes. I mean, I'm not going to confirm or deny that story, but it might ring a bell or two. But yeah, so there we go. So there's a lesson to any budding writers, producers, directors out there. Try and write from the heart. Write something that you feel is an important message. Make sure that you address things that, even if you're slightly afraid to do so, that you feel people need to hear this. But most importantly of all, let your actors have aircon. That sums up the industry in one, I think.
Absolutely. Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Very important subject and topic, as Sam has said. Before you go, one more plug. Last Sales Conference of the Apocalypse. Where, when, how can we see it? Right, so Waterloo East Theatre from the 3rd of October for 4 weeks. Every night, 7:30 p.m. with matinee on Sunday. And the website is lastsalesconference.com, lastsalesconference.com. Fantastic.
Very nicely done. So
Lovely.
Once you've finished with doing your music and your writing and your producing and your psychotherapy, into sales you go.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. Brilliant stuff.
Dave, thank you again for coming on. It's been brilliant. And hopefully Drew and I will be able to make it out to the show, and we'll see you very soon.
Definitely, yeah.
Amazing.
Good to see you both, guys. Cheers. Thank you.
Take care.
Take care, Dave. See you soon.
Bye.
Well, all I can say is an absolutely fascinating, enlightening chat with David there. And I really can understand now why. I mean, I know how important all your work is to you, but obviously Game Over is something really quite special. And I can see why now it was such an important, enjoyable, but an important piece of work to be involved in.
Yeah, I think we're very lucky that, and we said this numerous times, and we kind of live and dine off it, the fact that we love what we do, and we are incredibly fortunate to be doing a vocation that not only pays our bills, but also gives us enjoyment every single day. Yeah. So we are hugely grateful for that. But it's safe to say that it is incredibly rare to have the experience that I did with Game Over there, which is to be able to do something enjoyable, something entertaining, but equally be able to be part of putting out a very, very important message and supporting and telling stories that need to be told, things that perhaps are almost taboo at times, shall we say, and to be able to deliver those elements, those stories, those subject matters in an entertaining but appropriately done way. Yeah, just hugely rewarding. And I do feel very lucky to have been part of that. And that goes for all of Dave's work. I mean, I was part of Game Over, but then the subsequent shows, Dissociated and upcoming Last Sales Conference of the Apocalypse, slightly different storylines, slightly different elements within a main theme, but equally important, equally touching, and equally poignant, I think is probably a way of looking at it. So these are things that need to be supported, and whether you're part of them or or part of the audience, or however you may support, I think we need more of this out there. We really do.
I think you're right, and not only are they well put together, entertaining, but also they are extremely well informed, because David works as a practicing therapist as well. So where he's coming from is he realizes how important they are, but also they are so accurate and so well put together and so well thought out that there are no mistakes here. No. This is a man who really knows what he's talking about. And you mentioned that, and he mentioned last sales conference of the apocalypse. If anybody missed the dates for that, it opens on the 3rd of October, runs to the 30th of October at the Waterloo East Theatre, last sales conference of the apocalypse. If anyone wants to go, needs to be a little bit more informed, or just is interested in this man's work, please go and see it. It's very important.
Please do go and support. And speaking of support, I think Dave touched on it briefly, but something we need to make people aware of, or people are probably already aware of, is these things don't just take shape on their own. And Dave's been fortunate enough to have some incredible support from charities who are heavily involved in the themes, and equally that they support him as he supports them by getting the message out that they exist to kind of be there for and to tell people about and to help those who are experiencing these things. All the charities that are involved in this case, and all the links to what they do and who they are contained in the podcast details and are on all our social media surrounding this post. And equally, lastsalesconference.com, Dave's website for this production, all the details are on there as well. So do go check it out and look into all the other things that are involved, because it spans a whole lot wider.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, it's just such an important message being sent out, but does it without being preachy. I think like this isn't just everyone should sit down and listen. This is everyone should, but why should they not be entertained at the same time? I think it just
absolutely
a perfect combination of dealing with these things. So
serious subject made very accessible, which
of course, yeah,
all you can have.
Yeah.
Now, talking of accessible, I know that you are back on set next week filming again, but again, as we've alluded to, that no information is accessible as yet, is it, mate?
No, it's not accessible. It's there. And I will be what's the word? Expressing a bit more about it very, very soon.
Beautifully put.
But what we can talk about, because that's enough of secrecy, definitely. What we can talk about is your very exciting week, because I know your next big adventure is starting, isn't it?
Yeah, I start rehearsals on Monday next week for Ghosts on the Wire, I should say. That will be at the Union Theatre from the 8th of October, but I will be doing far more advertisements than that. But and I think what I will do is I'll reveal more I'll bring us a few bits and pieces from the rehearsal room as we go through.
Oh, but very nice.
Meet the cast and the director and that lot as we go. So, but yeah, I think we should do that. I think I'll take us out on the road. We
always say, don't we, that we want to try and bring more behind the scenes stuff, and people have always been very supportive. All the listeners and watchers have always said that they're particularly fond of the bits where we go out on location and chat to people as it's happening and reveal some sort of behind the scenes stuff. So if you can do a bit of that while you're away, then I think it'll be much appreciated, mate. I look forward to it.
I think we'll drop in on rehearsals. Definitely, mate. Definitely.
Excellent. I look forward to that. And I look forward, Mr. Pettis, I look forward to seeing you again next week. And of course, to all the lovely people at home or traveling or wherever you happen to be joining us, please do come back next week. We'll do a bit more chatting and try and do a little bit less secrecy. What do you reckon, Drew?
Yeah, we'll open the doors a bit more, but I'm really looking forward to it, Sam. So, mate, have a lovely week.
Cheers. See you all next time.
Take care, everyone.
Bye. Thanks again for watching this episode of Drewling Samantics.
Please make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video.
Don't forget, we're also available as audio only. Just search Drewling Samantics in any good podcast app. And please support us on social media. All our links and handles are on screen now.
We love welcoming new followers and subscribers, so why not share with your family and friends so they can join in too? Thanks very much. See you next time.